Heidi, thank you. You've been following a lot of international developments with regard to repatriations. We saw a lot of coverage of 2 Germans who wanted to go back home. They were stuck in South Africa. How did that operation go down?
So we understand that there are many tourists and foreign nationals stuck in South Africa, given the fact that we are in a lockdown, but also given the fact that there is almost, if I can say, a global lockdown, with many airlines not flying anymore to try and stop the spread of this coronavirus, travel bans and so forth. So we understand that the German government facilitated a plan with the South African government, and SAA was the national carrier that took these over 600 Germans back to Germany last night. The flight left at 10 o'clock. So we understand this is the first of about 15 chartered flights that SAA will facilitate to various countries. We know Brazil is one of them, Belgium. We're not sure about the UK as yet, but we understand that they're still in talks with that. So when these flights take off, they take these foreign nationals back to these various countries. But the big question is, what about the South Africans that are stranded abroad? And many have reached out to us to say, we are stuck, we have left our children back here in South Africa, they're being unsupervised, they're teenagers stuck alone, and we've left our parents who are elderly. And many South Africans stuck abroad are saying, we're running out of money, we don't have enough money to be in these hotels, we don't have enough money to buy food, to buy chronic medication, there's language barrier issues here. So we know that that's the government is aware of that, and they're trying to make a plan.
Understandably, operations of this nature have a lot of logistical problems. Not only do they need to organise planes or sort of try and regulate the financial impact. I can imagine, sending a plane to bring back 5 or 6 people can be quite challenging economically, but also the testing of people overseas before they are repatriated, their quarantine, medical facilities. What is the government saying about those processes and how those things will be handled?
It's such a key question, but I think the details really lack in this instance, because we're trying to get clarity on this. We understand that the South African government is saying that if you're showing signs of any symptoms of COVID-19, you will not be allowed to fly and so forth. The same happened with the Germans that left South Africa. If they were showing any signs, they would not be allowed to board that flight. But we understand that the government is saying that testing is being done, and if you're showing any symptoms, you will not be allowed to be back into South Africa. And when you do come back, we were following a group of 8 South Africans on Tuesday that were on a cargo flight via Emirates, and they landed in South Africa. They were then transported to a government facility to be quarantined for 14 days. So those that are stuck abroad that are going to be coming back in the coming weeks, they will definitely have to be quarantined for 14 days at a government facility. But we know that the 8 South Africans that came this past week, they actually had their results of testing negative for COVID-19, which they produced to the government to say, please let us back in, we are negative, we will quarantine. Many of them saying, we're fine to quarantine, we just want to come back. So that process is being facilitated by the government, and they're obviously being very careful in terms of not allowing people to just come in without being tested, or if they're showing any symptoms.
In instances where people are showing symptoms and possibly have tested positive in overseas countries, and I'm talking about South African citizens here, what is the level of government communication with regards to their care overseas? I can imagine that must be very frightening, being stuck on your own in a country. That country has absolutely no responsibility to make sure that you are a priority. They will prioritise their own citizens, and yet our country would want to make sure that its citizens are taken care of overseas.
It's extremely concerning. And Annelie, I've spoken to a couple of people that are actually stuck in Italy, and they are stuck in their hotel rooms, and they're not allowed to leave, because there is a concern. If you leave and you contract the virus, are you going to be prioritized, or somebody that's from Italy that needs the health care as much as you do? How are they going to distinguish who gets treated first? So it's not very clear as to how government is facilitating that, and whether or not South Africans have come out to say we are not able to get treated because we are foreigners in this specific country. I actually don't know if there are any cases that where South Africans are saying, I have corona and I'm in a foreign country, please help me. So I think they are trying to do the best they can can, but one can only imagine. It's a global pandemic. People are really struggling. Ventilators are very scarce. There is no cure at this stage. So, you know, it's tough for everybody, but I think everybody's trying to find a way to deal with this as best as possible. And this is why South Africans want to come back home, because they know they'll be prioritised here.
Absolutely, and understandably also that our government is trying to make plans on the fly. No one has dealt with this kind of a situation before. Many of the plans that they're putting into place, they're having to do so at the last minute and try and mitigate problems that arise as they do, as and when they do. And the global reaction seems to be that we're doing quite well. So
hopefully,
let's keep it up.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Heidi Jokos talking to us about international repatriations, both of South Africans and of foreigners from South Africa back to their home countries.